Before you get started with your Google form, you're going to want to think through how you're going to set it up. So I'm going to go to the Settings tab. You can elect to make your Google form a quiz. This is important if, say, you're doing a growth goal or you're doing something where you want to grade. Google Forms can grade it for you, particularly if you are using multiple choice questions, which make it easy for Google Forms to grade. You can choose to release the grades to students right away so they can see how they did. If you have open text, you can choose to release grades later after manual review. So this will collect email addresses because that's how the grade will be sent. Blocked mode is not available to us because we do not use Chromebooks. You can choose to show students the questions they missed, the questions they got correct. They can see their total points and what they received on each question. You can assign a default question point value here. Once you're in your form, if you wanted to change one question, say you were doing an open text and you wanted that to be worth 5 points, you could manually change that within the form. So those are your quiz settings. You can choose how you're managing responses. If you want to collect email addresses, you can do that. You might want to set it to do not collect. You can still require login so that people have to log into their Google account. This is if you want to restrict a form to people within the district but want to preserve their anonymity, you would set it to do not collect. Once again, if you want to send people a copy of how they responded, you do need to collect email addresses. You can choose to allow people to edit their responses or not. You can limit to one response. You would do this if you, like in a voting situation where you wanted people only to be able to respond once. You could turn this on. Sometimes if I'm dealing with little students who might have a hard time logging into their Google accounts, you have to log in to do this, so keep that in mind. Sometimes what I'll do with little kids is I will not click this on, but I will turn off this show link to submit another response so they don't see that they can click on it. It's not foolproof, but that's something to keep in mind when you're setting up your form. You can go back and change settings after you've set up, by the way. In presentation, you can choose to show a progress bar. That's kind of nice if you have a longer survey so people can see how much longer they have to go. If you are quizzing or you want kids not to be able to cheat off each other, you can choose to shuffle your question order. Once they've submitted, you can click here to edit if you want to have a custom message like thank you for voting or thank you for answering my questions. You can do that right here. You would have to save it. If you do want people to be able to respond again, a situation where this might be is if you're collecting files from people and you don't want to limit them to only being able to submit one file, you could show a link to submit another response right away. Or if people were submitting courses, say for instance for the Summer Learning Academy, this would be on so that they could just click on and do another response. If you want people to see how the voting is going, that can be really important if you're trying to drum up enthusiasm for something where you're voting or your people, you want them to see how things are going. You can turn this view result summary on. You can disable autosave. Not really sure why you would do that, but you can disable autosave. On form defaults, so this is going to apply this to all forms. So if you always want to not collect email addresses, you can do this here. You can then change this on a singular form, I believe. You can, this just saves you time if you always know you're not going to collect email addresses, for instance. And then once again, on question defaults, you can just make all your questions required unless you turn it off, or you can turn that off and all questions will be optional unless you turn it on specifically with each question. And that is the Settings tab. The Responses tab is where you would go and look at how things are going on a form that you've published. And then once again, your Questions tab is where you're actually doing your editing.